To kick things off, we got John Fugelsang on the air with us. I'm very excited. Hey,
Hello.
John. Very excited to have you. Hi, John. How are you doing?
Well, how are you is the question. Have you recovered from that monstrosity at the Super Spreader Arena?
Yeah. What are you hearing about folks getting? Because I've been testing. I was in a vehicle with several people who have now tested positive. So we're masking here at the station. I'm feeling good though. How about yourself? What are you hearing?
Doing okay so far. Just all of the horrible things wrong with me before I went there are still intact. So that was what I was most worried about.
What gets exacerbated? What maintains? Yeah, there's a lot to manage. Your name came. Look, your name came up yesterday. I was door knocking. I was laughing because you were so kind to me after the show for the Sexy Liberal Comedy Tour, Saves America or Democracy, Save the World. All kinds of saving is what you guys do with that comedy show. All kinds of saving. You were very kind. And we kept running into each other, and then we couldn't get you on. It was a lot to juggle. And then I found out that one of my best friends caught up with you at the McCormick Center or McCormick Place to talk about Dylan fans for Harris. And it turns out you're a huge Bob Dylan fan, so this all worked out perfectly to promote.
Well, first of all, let me just get one thing clear. I didn't say anything. I wasn't nice to you at all. You crushed opening. Folks, here's how it works. When you do these tours, a lot of times local radio folk will come and make some comments up front, and it's often very nice. It's sometimes a little awkward. You don't expect someone with the chops that Patti has to show up there and like blow the room away. I mean, it was so funny. I was so enjoying you. Aww. It was the first time I relaxed all day because you made me laugh so hard. So thank you for being a part of that show. It was actually a letdown after her, folks. You need to know that. It was pretty much just tragic after she got off stage. But yeah, so the Dylan thing, you know, I've been asked to do all kinds of these like Zoom meetings. I've been putting together something, ragingly heterosexual cat men against J.D. Vance. Ragingly heterosexual dads who have cats against J.D. Vance. That's the group I'm looking for. And my brothers of the night are out there. But yeah, this was a wacky one, you know, because like I got asked to do like a Christians for Kamala thing, and I do a lot of material about the Bible and talk a lot about Christianity, and I'm writing a book about that. But Bob Dylan fans for Kamala was very intimidating because I'm like, oh, okay, the people who like smart music and smart politicians, pressure's on. So Wednesday night, I'm very proud to be one of the non-musical acts taking part in this Dylan Fans for Harris Walls. I do hope Bob would approve. As far as I know, Bob knows about it and hasn't put the kibosh on it, so I guess Bob approves. And I'm just so honored to be with my people. I've seen Bob Dylan live over 65 times in my life, which is enough to end a marriage in many circles. And he's my favorite person to see live. I've seen him. I've seen Springsteen and Neil Young come out with him. I've seen him duet with Patti Smith. I've had so many great memories of the Bob shows I've seen over the years. And you know, I like Bob Dylan fans. They're not all old, bitter white guys. There's lots of cool people who like Bob Dylan, so I'm only too happy to be a part of it.
You're absolutely right. I used to have a segment. I used to be on another radio station, and I have to be very honest with you. There's a video that I think is going to be part of that evening. I'm not sure if you'll be able to join them for the whole event, but I used to have a segment on my previous show called Patti's Appalling Lack of Musical Knowledge. So here's what you have to know. I love music. I can tell when something is AI music, and it makes me crazy. I hate it. I love music. I love good music, but I can't name songs. Like Adam Selzer, our friend who's helping organize this event, has a video, and he asks me, and he makes fun of me for the lack of musical knowledge, and he goes, "Can you name 5 Bob Dylan songs?" I cannot, John. I will be honest with you.
Oh, yes, you can. Come on now. I know you can do that.
No.
Okay, folks, right now, blowing in the blank.
The wind.
Blowing in the
wind.
Blank.
Yes, in the wind, right?
Like a rolling blank.
So, yes. But
okay, that's 2.
That's prompts.
The times they are a blank.
Sure.
Okay, not too bad. Tangled up in blank.
No.
Tangled up in blank.
Nope.
Oh, dear. Doctor.
Okay, so John.
Lay lady blank.
Nope. Here's the thing. There are comics who've almost jumped out of moving cars when they find this out. Okay. We used to have a segment where we would play 10 seconds of a song, and listeners had to guess if I would know the song. Like, that was truly the bit.
That's awesome.
And
that's very funny.
Yeah, and people would be like, come on. So to spare yourself the pain and the horror of proceeding down this path. But know that I love Bob Dylan. What I was surprised to find is I bought my mother, we live in a 2-flat with my mom, so she lives downstairs, and we bought her an Alexa, so now I told her how to use it and how to, she can ask for her favorite music. Did not know that my mother was such a huge Bob Dylan fan on all the time. Or she doesn't know how to ask for something else. I'm not sure. But no,
I'm still convinced I can find 3 more Bob Dylan songs.
Nope.
Yeah, 2 more Bob Dylan songs,
Look.
Things have blank. Winner of the Academy Award. Things have blank.
Nope. Let me tell you something. I love Pat Benatar. I got 2 songs I can name. And even now, I'm a little bit freaked out about it. Indigo Girls, I have a better shot at, maybe. But if a song isn't
pretty hip.
Thank you. I was so excited when the Barbie movie came out. I'm like, they're getting something a little closer to fine.
That was hilarious.
I loved it. So at any rate, so now that I've shared something that I have my husband, when we started dating, first of all, he's a beautiful singer. He grew up in a household filled with music. His father was a musician and he wrote like musical plays. And when we started dating, he loves Elvis Costello, and he kept trying to get me to like know the music. I can't, and he's accepted it. Every time someone was singing, he's like, "Do you know who that is?" I'm like, "I don't know, Elvis Costello." He's like, "That's Madonna. What are you talking about?"
I know you can't impose. Gentlemen, you can't impose your rock geekdom on a woman or a child. It's like pushing your religion on them, gentlemen. Believe me, they will rebel. You can make it available, and they can come to it, gentlemen. Listen, when I lived in Hollywood, I came home one day, and my wife was playing Tom Petty's Wildflower albums in the house all by herself without me around, and I counted that as a personal victory. That's as good as it gets. Okay, you can't. It's like imposing your religion on a woman, gentlemen, and we know how that turns out all too often. So good for you.
Yes, and good for my husband. What he's delighted by is a whole collection. Now, thousands of strangers who have heard me on the show talking about it and still can't believe it. And he's like, "Welcome to my world." Welcome to my world. Oh, by the way, he just texted me and wants to make sure that we talk. My husband is a big fan of yours and wants to know more about separation of church and hate.
Oh, that's my book that's coming out next year. I turned it in to Simon & Schuster after the Sexy Liberal show, but before the DNC started. I stayed awake for 36 hours finishing my manuscript and got it turned in. I had promised them they would get it before the DNC began, and because I knew I wouldn't have a chance all week. It's a book that I've been writing for a while, and it's pretty much about how to use the Bible when debating a right-wing fundamentalist or Christian nationalist. It's for atheists. It's for sane believers of all faiths. And it's really about how right-wing politicians are against everything Jesus actually taught on all the issues that divide us. And right-wing religion as well. They don't follow Jesus. That's why they never try to post his words on schoolhouse walls or courthouse walls. And it gives you the tools you need to respectfully argue scripture with these people and prove how full of crap they actually are.
Now, where does your knowledge come from? Because when I was at my former radio station, so I was at WGN, and I was on overnight, and I would have folks call with their cherry picking and say all these things. And I knew that abortion wasn't something that Christ ever talked about. But I briefly thought about studying the Bible, taking some classes, and I thought, I really don't care enough to have these arguments. So where does I'm like, I don't want to get, but so I love that you're basically giving us the cliff notes to get there rather than having to go sit in a boring class. I'd rather read your book.
Sure,
yes.
Sure.
So
sure, yeah. But I try to make it funny. And why you don't have to heal wounds like I do? Why should you learn that stuff? So you're not trying to repair psychic trauma through ineffective means. No, my parents are ex-clergy. My mother was a Catholic nun for 16 years. She was a nurse and worked with lepers in the jungles of Malawi and then in a hospital in Malawi. My father taught history to Catholic boys as a Franciscan brother in Brooklyn. So my parents, sometimes you find out your parents were married to other people before they married each other. I found out my parents were both married to Jesus before they married each other, and he got heavy visitation rights in my house. And my dad really wanted to raise me to be way too liberal for the Christians and way too Christian for the liberals. And every therapist I've ever spoken to says he pulled it off. So we were brought up to be progressive, free-thinking Catholics, which is why I do stand-up, because I can't afford this therapy I require, Patti. So for years I've joked about it, done material about it, and I debated Jerry Falwell and David Duke on Bill Maher in my 20s, and I like all this stuff, and I found the more I talked about it, the more people actually responded to it. And I think it's because, they say the largest growing religious group in America are people who were raised Mormon. I think the largest growing religious group in America now are people who were raised religious and now consider themselves spiritual, because right-wing people have turned so many of us off to religion. When people quit religion, it's not because of God or Jesus or the teachings in the Gospels or Santa Claus. It's because of the horrible people. It's because of the hypocrisy and the cruelty masquerading as piety, the homophobia that is a rejection of Jesus' teachings. And for 45 years, they have managed to get the followers of Jesus to vote against everything Jesus talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. The Bible's not against it. Judaism doesn't ban it. That's Jesus' religion. Abortions are legal and free in Israel right now. This is a 45-year racket pulled off by right-wing Christianity to replace and displace everything Jesus talked about, like welcome the stranger, or put away thy sword. He who lives by the sword will die by the sword, or forgive everyone. Jesus in Matthew 25 gives his instructions how to stay out of hell and how to have a Christian nation. And he says you got to take care of the poor, individuals and nations, take care of the sick, individuals and nations, welcome the stranger, and be kind to those in prison. Nothing about screaming at women outside clinics or persecuting transgender children or how often you go to church or how much money you give your church or how much you hate other religions. He pretty much says it. Take care of the poor, take care of the sick, welcome the stranger, and be kind to those in prison. Do any right-wing folks fight for those things?
No. There seems to be a lot more rage and trying to shame and basically dehumanize anybody that doesn't believe what they do. And I'm very fortunate. The music lover husband that I have was also raised in a Catholic household that was progressive. And I kind of touched on it briefly when we were talking backstage. I have a very complicated religious background. I was of that large growing population of Mormons. I was a Mormon till I was 10. Because, we're baptized, they're baptized, what's considered to be the age of reason. So reasonable at 10. Much longer story. But if you're going to drown a girl, you got to give her a heads up and tell her to hold her nose. That was the last day I was a Mormon. That's all I'm saying. It's true. Seriously. And then he dunked me 2 more times. And I thought I was going to feel the Holy Spirit, not see him. But then I became Lutheran because all my friends were. And my parents, again, long story, but I was fortunate enough to meet my husband and kind of become part of this family that reflected a lot more what I believed and what I feel, right? And without having to sit in Sunday school for 8 hours a day as I did in the Mormon church. But, one of the things I've learned, I don't know if you've ever talked to Jess Piper. She's out of Missouri in the Dirt Road Dems. And she talks about when she rings a doorbell and goes door knocking when she ran for office and now canvassing for this year's election, people will ask her if she's a Democrat or Republican, and she'll say a Democrat, and they'll say, well, I'm a Christian, I can't vote for a Democrat. It's become so entangled, that identity of being conservative and Christian. Do you see that softening? I don't, this like we saw last week with Republicans saying, just because you vote for Kamala Harris doesn't mean you're a Democrat, it means you're a patriot. Do you think we're on that, it's possible to make inroads with folks who have so deeply entangled those two parts of themselves?
Sure I do. Okay. Sure I do. Look at how many people have talked their parents and grandparents into not being homophobes in the last 25 years. Look at how many old folks have been talked out of this gay hate that they thought was sanctioned by God in the last 25 years. I've seen too many examples of it. Evolution is possible even for people who don't believe in evolution. Here's what I do. Whenever I deal with a right-wing Christian, I got a very simple question. I say, please tell me one teaching of Jesus that Donald Trump or MAGA or the Republican Party have fought for legislatively in the last 30 years. Just one. And then you'll find out how little they know the Bible. first thing I get is abortion. I'm like, no, the Bible's not against abortion. Jesus was against the death penalty, but they differ with Jesus on that. So the second thing they'll say is, well, a strong border. And that's when I have to say, no, the only commandment in the entire Bible, Old or New Testament, is the commandment to welcome the stranger. That's it. In terms of borders or immigration, only welcome the stranger, both testaments. And so the third answer they'll give most of the often is, he moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. And that's when I have to explain that nowhere in the Bible in 33 AD does Jesus mention the United States or where our future embassy should be in 2,000 years. These folks haven't read the Bible. It is their camouflage for meanness. And I'm writing a book that's all about camouflage removal. You know, they're still allowed to be Christian. They're not allowed to hate and say that it's sanctioned by Jesus.
No, I agree completely. And I also, there's so many folks that I know that, similar to your experience, not necessarily a former clergy raising them, but I mean, I actually have an aunt who's a nun, and she's super cool. And my other aunt, who I think what broke her, and I don't know what her politics were before, we didn't know all these things about some of our family members until, push came to shove, and that would be shoved by Trump. But my Aunt Pat became very liberal, very progressive because of the border, because of seeing children separated from their families and put into cages. And you're right. I'm in such a place of cynicism. I have a son who has severe challenges intellectually and physically. And after everything I saw last week with these people calling Gus a blubbering bitch and just the most hateful things. And here's the thing. I'm not surprised anymore. I'm not. Do you have any surprise left in you? Any shock?
No, but I mean, hate makes you stupid, and it happens to people on the left, too. You stay on Twitter too long, and the hate will seem like morality, and hating seems like the right thing to do, and hating substitutes for thinking sometimes. It can be a habit, and I don't think all these people have hatred in their heart. I think Ann Coulter drinks it for breakfast, but other one of these people, I think they're just caught up in the scheme of hating all the time.
I agree, and I was at the RNC. You weren't at the RNC, were you? No, everything's a blur now. Yeah. It's all crazy. Yeah. We were. I
really wanted to go. I'm a fan of lip syncing and of guys who beat their wives and are offered primetime slots on night 4. So I wish I'd been there.
It was surreal because there were a lot of folks talking about how Trump was saved. The Lord has a higher power, a higher purpose for him. That's why he survived.
Yeah, every one of those people is saying that God wanted a 50-year-old fireman dead in front of his kids. That's what those people are saying.
Yeah.
Every one of them. God wanted the fireman dead. They're blaspheming.
Yeah, exactly. But they don't hear it that way. Well, I'm glad that that you have faith that they will see. Some will see the error of their ways.
Some will, but some of them are still. I mean, they're like the Confederates. They're drunk on their own ugly myth, and they believe that their evil is righteous, and they're going to believe it till they go. They believe that hating people is what you're supposed to do because that's what they were taught. And you can read the Bible to them all day, but you can read the Constitution to them all day, but they won't be able to hear the well-regulated militia part in the Second Amendment. They've made up their minds, and they've recreated Jesus in their own image. They've recreated God in their own image. And God always seems to hate the same people they do, doesn't he?
He really does. It's amazing how that syncs up. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's like this is my problem is not with religion. My problem is with the extreme right wing of every religion. The fundamentalist Christians, the fundamentalist Jews, the fundamentalist Muslims. The overwhelming majority of liberal and moderate Christians, Muslims, and Jews are getting along just fine all across the world in offices and neighborhoods and families right now, and they never make the news for it. It is the far right wing of all religions that keep thinking violence is okay if my side does it, women are second-class citizens, LGBTQ people are against the will of God who's created them all over the earth. These are the people who believe in punishment and not healing. These are the people who are always telling you who your enemy is. Look, if you're at a church and your church is not preaching love your enemies, but is instead telling you who your enemies are, you're not really in a church. Get out.
And what was amazing, and I'm sure you've seen this over the last year or so, maybe it was more, people complaining that their pastors, their priests, the people in the clergy were getting too woke because they were mentioning things.
By quoting Sermon on the Mount. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't see it.
I mean, imagine if these people ever read the New Testament, they'd hate the woke lead character. They'd hate him. He tells you to love your enemies. He overturns so many laws of the Old Testament, and I mean, Jesus came out and was telling people who were occupied by the Roman Empire, like under military occupation, that they should love their enemies and bless those who persecute them. You want to talk a lefty talking to a tough room? Mm-hmm. Holy crap. So that's who he's always been. The Jesus of the Bible is a peaceful, radical, nonviolent revolutionary. He hung out with lepers, hookers, and crooks. He never spoke English, never said thee or thou. He was not a white person. He was anti-capitalism, anti-wealth, anti-death penalty, anti-public prayer, Matthew 6:5, never anti-gay, never anti-abortion, never technically anti-premarital sex. The only things Jesus called out were adultery, divorce and remarriage, and hypocrisy, Trump fans. And he was a long-haired, brown-skinned, homeless, unarmed, Middle Eastern, anti-slut-shaming, Palestinian liberal Jew.
What?
That's it.
That's so
the only thing he called out was adultery, divorce, and remarriage. Jesus thought it should be harder for men to dump their wives. In Matthew 19, he overturns the divorce laws of Moses. And he says, male and female, God made them, and when you marry, you stay married for life. Unless your wife cheats on you, you can't ever get rid of her, because back then, if a man no longer delighted in his wife, he could kick her to the curb. So Jesus says you can't do that anymore. The right-wingers take one line out of that.
Right.
Male and female, he made them, and say, see, Jesus was against gay marriage. They never even read the context to see that it's Jesus saying, no, you don't get to dump your wife when you're tired of them. And these people all support Donald Trump. I'm telling you, they haven't read the Bible, and we are not obliged to take their claims of piety seriously. They support a mean agenda of cruelty and selfishness, and they use the Bible as pretense to make it seem virtuous. We are allowed to use Scripture to call them out if they're going to be hiding behind Jesus.
Man, I feel like we had Monday school in here, Lady B. That's John Fugelsang. He's going to be a part of the Dylan Fans for Harris and Walls this Wednesday. It's going to be a live stream. You can go to DylanFansForHarris.com, featuring Jeff Slate, Earl Slick, Emma Swift, and John Fugelsang. Make sure you go to his website, JohnFugelsang.com, so that you can check out all his podcasts, including coverage at the DNC. And stay up to date is when his book comes out, Separation of Church and Hate. And I think we have to call you for Monday school again sometime if you wouldn't mind. I would love to do this.
Anytime. You name it, please.
Excellent.
I'm lonely.
All right.
Anytime.
Well, then it's going to be
I'm going into withdrawal. I haven't been surrounded by tons of Democrats in 48 hours since I left Chicago. Call anytime.
Oh, by the way, before we go, you have to admit, our city dazzled last week. I feel so grateful.
Beautiful.
It was, yeah.
It's just so beautiful. And I talked to so many people who had never been before and like, oh my God, I can't believe how beautiful Chicago is. And it's because you guys are dealing with what New York dealt with. They, for years, up until 9/11, they hated New York City. And New York was standard for black. New York was standard for crime. They just tried to smear all cities by saying New York. After 9/11, they pretended they always loved us, and they transferred all of their projection and hate onto your beautiful city of Chicago. I had a beautiful time. I've never not had a great time in Chicago, and I love whenever people come and just fall in love with your city, as I fall in love with it again every time I return.
Oh, well, thank you for that. We're going to talk to you again soon, and we have your number now, so we'll be stalking. Well, stalking's a bad thing to say, but
anybody can still see the Sexy Liberal show. You can go to sexyliberal.com and get the pay-per-view with Mark Hamill and J.B. Pritzker and Jamie Harrison. It was Jan Chakowski. It was quite a party. It
was so much fun. All of you killed, and the panel at the end was fantastic. Yes, folks, make sure you check out the Sexy Liberal Saves the World comedy show. Again, what's the website for folks to get the pay-per-view?
Just go to sexyliberal.com and it'll tell you where to go.
Excellent. We'll talk to you soon, John. Thank you so much for doing the Dylan Fans for Harris and Walls this Wednesday.
I'm honored to do your show. You're amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You too.